Between 1820 and the Civil War, roughly 13,000 black Americans did something almost no one talks about now. They got on ships and sailed east, across the Atlantic, to Africa, to build a country. The American Colonization Society wrote down every name. What it did not yet know was that of the first 4,500 people who made that crossing, fewer than 2,000 would be alive 20 years later. These are the surnames that sailed into the highest death rate ever accurately recorded in human history and became the founding names of a nation. This is a countdown of 15 surnames recorded in the immigration rolls of the American Colonization Society, the people who left the United States for Liberia, counting from 15 to 1. And before I name a single one, I have to be honest with you about what this record is, because it is the most morally complicated document this channel has ever covered. There are no simple heroes here, and there are no simple villains. And if anyone tells you this story is only triumph or only tragedy, they have not read the rolls. Start with the organization, because you cannot understand the names without it. In 1816, a group of white men founded the American Colonization Society in Washington. Their stated goal was to send free black Americans to a colony in West Africa. And here is the part that makes this so difficult. They did not all want the same thing. Some were genuine reformers who believed slavery was evil and that black Americans would never get justice in the United States. So a new nation was the answer. But many others were slaveholders, and they wanted free black people removed from America precisely because free black people were living proof that slavery was not natural, and their presence threatened the whole system. The society's membership included Henry Clay, Francis Scott Key, and Bushrod Washington, George Washington's own nephew, so the exact same ship could carry a person sailing toward a dream of freedom and a person being quietly removed by the country that feared them. Both were on the manifest. Both are in the rolls. Now the record itself. The American Colonization Society kept meticulous lists, the roll of immigrants sent to the colony of Liberia, and they survived, held at the Library of Congress across hundreds of reels of microfilm and studied most rigorously by the historian Tom Schick, who built a database of the first wave. These rolls are extraordinary for genealogy because they often record what almost nothing else does. The immigrant's name, their age, the state and county they came from, whether they were born free or emancipated, and frequently the name of the person who had emancipated them. Later rolls, after 1863, even mark immigrants as freed by A.L. Proclamation, Abraham Lincoln's proclamation. Picture a passenger list that is also a freedom record, that is also sometimes a death record. That is what these rolls are. 15 surnames. Here's number 15. Number 15, Coker. Start with a man who changed his own name before he ever changed his continent. He was born enslaved in Baltimore around 1780 as Isaac Wright. He escaped to New York, and to protect himself, he took a new name, Daniel Coker. He became a Methodist minister, and alongside Richard Allen, he helped found the African Methodist Episcopal Church, one of the most important black institutions in American history. He was even offered the position of first bishop of the AME Church, and he deferred to Allen. And then, in 1820, Daniel Coker got on the very first ship. He sailed on the Elizabeth, the vessel they would later call the Mayflower of Liberia. The man who helped build the black church in America left it to help build a nation in Africa. Coker is on the first roll. Number 14, Johnson. Elijah Johnson was on that first voyage too, and he is the reason there was a second chapter. When the first settlers landed, disease and hostility nearly destroyed them, and agents of the Colonization Society urged the survivors to give up and retreat to the safety of a British colony. Johnson refused. There is a line attributed to him that Liberians still remember. He had been 2 years searching for a home, and he would not leave it now. When the settlement at Cape Miserato was attacked, Johnson helped hold the line. He declined the offer to name a settlement after himself. Johnson is one of the most common surnames in Black America, and one of the founding names of Liberia, carried by a man who would not quit. Number 13, Carey. Lot Carey was born enslaved in Virginia around 1780. He worked in a Richmond tobacco warehouse, taught himself to read, bought his own freedom and the freedom of his children, and became a Baptist preacher. In 1821, he sailed for Africa, and he carried a sentence with him that people still quote. He said he wanted to go to a country where he would be judged by his worth, not his complexion. In Liberia, he was a preacher, a physician, and a leader. He served as acting agent, effectively governor of the colony, until he died in 1828 in an explosion of gunpowder while defending the settlement. Carey is a name that gave up American freedom, which he had bought with his own money, for the chance to be judged as a man. Number 12, Day. John Day was a free black man, a cabinet maker and skilled furniture maker from Virginia and North Carolina, and he was part of the wave of free black artisans who chose Liberia. His letters survive in the Colonization Society's papers, and they matter because they are not propaganda. They are private, and they are often sharply critical of the society, of American society, of the hardships of the colony. He became a Baptist minister and a Chief Justice of Liberia. The Day name reminds you that many immigrants were not desperate or coerced. They were skilled, literate, free people making a calculated bet that a black nation in Africa offered a future that white America never would. Number 11, Russwurm, John Brown. Russwurm had already made history before he left. In 1827, he co-founded Freedom's Journal in New York, the first black-owned and operated newspaper in the United States. He was also one of the first black men to graduate from an American college. And then, in 1829, having concluded that black Americans had no real future in the United States, he immigrated to Liberia, where he edited the Liberia Herald and became a colonial governor. His decision split black opinion because many saw colonization as a betrayal. Russwurm is the name of a man who built black American journalism and then left the country it spoke to, a decision that still generates argument 2 centuries later. Quick thing, then straight back to the count. If your surname has already come up or you are 11 deep and still waiting, subscribe now, because the last few names carry the hardest truths in this entire story. And right after number 1, I'm going to show you exactly how to search these immigration rolls for your own family. They record things almost no other document does, and they are free. Number 10, Skipwith. Peyton Skipwith was born enslaved in Virginia in 1800. His owner, John Hartwell Cock, believed in colonization, and in 1833, he emancipated Skipwith, his wife Lydia, and their 6 children, on the condition that they go to Liberia. Understand that condition. This was not a free choice between America and Africa. It was freedom, but only if you leave. Skipwith was a skilled stonemason, and he wrote letters back to Cock for years, letters that survive at the University of Virginia and give us one of the fullest first-person accounts of an immigrant's life. Those letters record the cost. His wife Lydia died of the African fever within the first year. Skipwith built with stone in Liberia and buried his wife in its soil. The name is a monument to emancipation with a price tag attached. Number 9, Roberts. In 1829, a 20-year-old free man of color from Petersburg, Virginia, boarded the ship Harriet with his mother and younger siblings and sailed for Liberia. His name was Joseph Jenkins Roberts. He was born free, largely of European descent, one of the immigrants who left not because he was enslaved, but because he judged that even a free black man had no real future in America. He became a merchant, trading between the colony and the United States, then the colony's first black governor. And when Liberia declared independence in 1847, Joseph Jenkins Roberts was elected its first president. Read that arc again. A free black man leaves a country where he cannot vote, and 18 years later, he is the elected president of a sovereign African republic modeled on the United States, with a flag of red and white stripes and a single white star. Roberts is the name at the very top of Liberia's founding, and he is on the roll of the ship Harriet, listed at age 20. Number 8, Teague. Colin Teague and his son Hillary carry a name that runs through the intellectual founding of Liberia. Colin Teague was a Richmond Baptist who, like Lot Carey, bought his own freedom and immigrated in the early 1820s, part of that first Virginia Baptist wave that gave the colony so many of its early leaders. His son Hilary Teague became a merchant, a newspaper editor, a legislator, and this is the crucial part, the principal author of Liberia's Declaration of Independence in 1847. Think about the symmetry. The words by which America announced itself to the world were written by Thomas Jefferson, a man who enslaved more than 600 people. The words by which Liberia announced itself as a free black republic were written by Hilary Teague, the son of a man who had been enslaved and had to purchase himself out of it. The Teague name sits on the founding document of the first black republic in Africa exactly the way Jefferson sits on America's, except the family had come the other way across the color line. Number 7, Washington. The name has to appear here because it appears everywhere in this story, and it carries the sharpest irony in the whole record. Bushrod Washington, George Washington's nephew and a Supreme Court justice, was a founder and the first president of the American Colonization Society. And the immigrant rolls are full of black families named Washington. People who have been enslaved, who carried that surname the way we saw in earlier chapters, and who now sailed to Africa under an organization led by a Washington. The same name is on both sides of the ledger, the enslaving family that helped organize the removal and the freed families who lived it. That is America in a single surname, carried in two directions across one ocean. Number 6, Harris. Harris is one of the most common surnames on the Liberia rolls, and I put it here to make a point about scale and about the people whose names are the only thing that survives of them. For every Roberts and Russ Worm whose life is documented, there are hundreds of ordinary immigrants, Harrises, Moores, Bakers, Greens, who appear on the rolls as a name, an age, a county, and then vanish from the record, very often because they died. The rolls are full of entire families listed together, and then, in a later census of the colony, only 1 or 2 names remain. Harris stands for the majority, not the famous founders, but the thousands of ordinary black Americans who took the same terrible gamble and are remembered now only because a clerk wrote them down before they sailed. Number 5, Moore. Moore carries the part of this story that most people never learn, and it is essential. Many immigrants, on arriving in Liberia, discovered they did not feel African at all. They felt American, in a land that was not theirs, and they built a society that reflected that. The immigrants and their descendants, who became known as Americo-Liberians, established themselves as a ruling class over the indigenous African peoples whose land the colony occupied. They built plantations. They restricted the voting rights of native Liberians. They created a settler hierarchy, freed slaves and their children, ruling over Africans on African soil. The Moore name and all the settler names carry this. The people who fled one racial caste system helped build another. The record holds that, and honesty requires saying it plainly. Number 4, Wright. Wright takes us to the terrible arithmetic at the center of this whole story, the number I gave you at the start. Of the 4,571 immigrants who arrived in Liberia between 1820 and 1843, only 1,819 were still alive by the end of that period. That is the mortality rate historians describe as the highest in accurately recorded human history. Malaria and yellow fever, what they called the African fever, killed immigrants by the thousands in their first year before their bodies could adapt. When you read a family on these rolls, understand that the statistical likelihood is that most of them died soon after landing. Wright stands for that grief, sailing to freedom. For well over half of these people meant sailing to an early grave. Number 3, Turner. Turner stands for the people who said no, and there were far more of them than there were immigrants. Because here's the truth. The romantic version leaves out most black Americans rejected colonization forcefully. As early as 1817, 3,000 free black people packed a church in Philadelphia, led by the wealthy sailmaker James Forten and the minister Richard Allen, and voted almost unanimously against the whole scheme. They said they were Americans, that their labor had built the country, and that they would not abandon the millions still enslaved. In 1829, David Walker's appeal, savage colonization as a plot to drain off free black leadership and make slavery permanent. Turner is here for the majority who stayed and fought, because the story of who left is only half the story, and the other half chose America and changed it. Number 2, Blyden, Edward Wilmot. Blyden is a slightly different case and a profound one. Born free in the Danish West Indies in 1832, he came to the United States hoping to study and was refused admission to American colleges because he was black. So he immigrated to Liberia in 1850. There he became the greatest intellectual the country ever produced, a scholar of Arabic and the classics, a diplomat, a college president, Liberia's ambassador to Britain, and the man most responsible for the early philosophy of Pan-Africanism, the idea that African peoples across the world share one destiny and should reclaim pride in the continent and its civilizations. Blyden looked hard at the same tragic, compromised Liberian experiment, the settler hierarchy, the death, the disillusionment, and he pulled from it an idea that would outlast all of it. That idea ran forward through Marcus Garvey, through W.E.B. Du Bois, through the independence movements that swept Africa in the 20th century, through the whole modern sense of a black diaspora with a shared history. The Blyden name is where Liberia's pain produced a philosophy that changed the world. Number 1, Doe, and this is the name that closes the whole story, and it is not an immigrant name at all. For 133 years, from independence in 1847 until 1980, the descendants of the American immigrants, the Americo-Liberians, always a small minority, perhaps 5% of the population, ruled Liberia and its indigenous majority through a single party, the true Whig Party. They held the land and the offices and restricted the rights of the native peoples around them. Then on April 12, 1980, a young indigenous Liberian master sergeant named Samuel Doe led a coup, overthrew and executed the Americo-Liberian president William Tolbert, and ended a century and a third of settler rule. Doe was Kron, one of the indigenous peoples whose ancestors were already there when the ships arrived. His name closes this countdown on purpose because it is the answer the land gave back. The descendants of enslaved Americans crossed an ocean to escape a caste system and built one on top of the Africans who were already home. In 1980, those Africans took the country back, and what followed was not peace but 2 brutal civil wars. There is no clean ending here. Both of those things are true, and both are this story. Now the science, because DNA fits this history in a way it fits almost no other. For most African Americans, the trail to a specific African origin is broken, but Liberia is different, and uniquely so because the migration ran the other way, and it was documented. There are families today in Liberia and in the United States who can trace a direct recorded line across the Atlantic in the 1800s, and DNA is now reconnecting the two halves. Autosomal cousin matching links, Americo-Liberian descendants back to African American families they share ancestors with because they were the same families only 6 or 7 generations ago, split by a single sailing date. A man in Monrovia and a woman in Virginia can match as cousins today, and the immigration roll can tell them exactly which ancestor got on which ship. The genetic signal and the paper record confirm each other. It is one of the very few places in the whole diaspora where the DNA and the document close the same loop, where you can point to the moment 2 branches of one family were separated by an ocean, and then watch a saliva test find them again. And now the honest word, because this channel does not deal in wishful thinking, and this story needs it more than most. Sailed back to Africa is a beautiful phrase and a misleading one. Almost none of these immigrants were going back to anywhere. Their ancestors had been taken generations before from many different regions of West and Central Africa, and they were landing in Liberia, a specific place none of their families had come from, among indigenous peoples who were strangers to them. It was not a homecoming. It was a second migration into a land as foreign to them as it would have been to any other American. The DNA proves this. An Americo-Liberian descendant's ancestry usually points not to Liberia at all, but to the same scattered origins as any other African American. And the surname, as always, is a lead and not a lineage. A Roberts or a Washington or Harris on the Liberia rolls is one specific documented family, not proof that your Roberts or Washington is theirs. The rolls decide, not the name. So here's how to search them, and it is free. The core collection is the records of the American Colonization Society at the Library of Congress, and the immigrant rolls have been transcribed and put online. Search Roll of Immigrants together with American Colonization Society, and you will find the ship-by-ship list by name, the Elizabeth of 1820, the Harriet, the Nautilus, and dozens more. The Virginia Immigrants to Liberia Project at the University of Virginia has built a searchable database with biographies. And the African Colonization Movement records, including the Maryland and Pennsylvania Society papers, fill in families those national rolls miss. When you find a name, read every column, the age, the county, and above all, the status column, because it will often tell you whether your ancestor was born free or emancipated, and by whom. That enslaver's name is your bridge back into the American records, the same bridge we have crossed in every chapter of this series. Tell me in the comments which surname and which ship or which U.S. state they left from. Name the state, because that is what separates two immigrant families who happen to share a name. Next video, we stay with this exact bridge. We take one immigrant off the Liberia rolls, a name, an age, a former owner, and we follow that former owner name backward out of the ship's manifest into the American estate records. And we find the family in slavery before they ever reach the sea. One roll, one name, all the way back. Wait until you see how far it reaches.